some of it has been touched on by subsequent speakers because it was around housing, but I suppose it's just to make the point that since the UNCRPD was ratified, it is down to every government department and local authorities and all government agencies to implement it. And part of the UNCRPD is consultation with disabled people. And there are organisations which are DPOs and not service providers. And that has to be proper engagement and not like what Elaine alluded to there. And I've heard that before from other people, where they are consulted with by government organisations, but their recommendations are just ignored, and that can't happen. So it has to be proper engagement, and yes, DPOs have to be supported to engage properly in that. Also then, just Senator Tom Cloonan talked about housing, and I know last year, I think it was Cavan County Council, where I'm from, issued a list of the number of people on the housing waiting list and the length of time they're on the list. And there were a number of people, it didn't identify the people obviously, but there were a number on it, 10 plus years, and all of them were disabled people. So disabled people are being discriminated against. Now, when I brought this up with the County Council, they were telling me that they are willing to put the houses in place and to do the different alterations to houses if needed. But many of these people have complex disabilities, and that they're claiming then the HSE weren't able or ready at that stage to come in and give the support that the person needed to live independently. Now that's what the County Council are saying. The HSE are sometimes saying the opposite. So we need to see government agencies working together. So I'm just wondering, is there an improvement in that now? Is there, under the new strategy, Housing for All, is there, and the Housing Disability Steering Groups, are we seeing better cooperation between the different government agencies, the local authority, the HSE and others, ensuring that people can live, disabled people can live independently in their community? And I'm also conscious that it's not just about accessible housing, the environment has to be accessible as well, and everything has to be universally designed. We need, you need the transport, we need, different agencies to come on board together and work together to ensure that people can live independently there. So that's, thank you.
Yeah, I think Deputy Tully has the situation improved. Everybody would like to think that it has, but the proof is in the pudding. And all I can say is that local authorities in their own right as housing providers and in dealing with approved housing bodies, of which there are several registered in the country, I think there is a renewed emphasis on the type of accommodation, first of all, but tailor-made designs for people who are on the housing list. And sometimes, Deputy, this can be difficult to predict because people come to the top of the housing list. People's physical condition could improve or deteriorate in any particular year. So you have to be ready on the spot to provide whatever improvements or facilities are required in any particular house or apartment. And we try to manage that. And equally, Deputy, in relation to disabled persons grants, we work with our occupational therapists through the HSE, and again the dynamics of that can change in any particular year, and we get quite an amount of support from the Department of Housing in that. And so to establish a kind of a metric as to whether it improves or not, I wouldn't be prepared to say that this morning without having concrete evidence, and I suspect you'd understand that, Deputy. But certainly it's one of the things that we'd be working on, because I think one of the benefits of this engagement this morning is prodding us into providing those kind of responses that are required by DPO and NEM and the likes, about level of engagement, records and all of that kind of stuff. So we will be tracking that very closely. I would have to say, and this is my own personal view across housing delivery right across the board, that there is a renewed awareness and design kind of instinct for universal access and spaces in houses. It's to be able to determine the quantity or ratio of disabled provision vis-a-vis other provision. And I mentioned a 10% figure there earlier, Deputy, has been in most housing delivery action plans. That can vary from county to county and from year to year. And to give you an example, in County Leash, with a population of only 92,000 people, there's about 11,400 people that are recorded with some form of disability. If you replicate that across the country, you can see the level and the complexity of design issues that would come to hand. So I think instinctively it has improved, but I don't have any evidence supporting that, Deputy.
Thank you. I actually just wanted to follow up on Peter Kearns' point regarding disability equality training earlier, but I also want to take the opportunity to thank Deputy Tully for very clearly and explicitly reaffirming the obligations under the CRPD at local and national level. And it is an area of extreme concern to our members. On public consultation, we support many of our members on local consultation through public consultations. They are not fully accessible. We are not in any way resourced. DWI to date has actually not received any funding whatsoever, literally any funding whatsoever. And in fact, our members have put their hands in their own pockets to the tune of up to thousands of euro to consult with. To, from childcare costs to travel costs to other costs, and then to have that time, energy, and very, that we're one of the poorest sectors in society, and to have that ultimately disregarded and no transparency or accountability is heartbreaking, to be honest, as well as frustrating. But one thing I wanted to raise on the disability equality training, and I fully support what Peter said, but I think this is an area again of extreme concern to our community members, is that we have participated in and witnessed disability awareness training, including that delivered to national bodies and local governments, that contains incorrect information. As well as anything else, it contains dangerous, misleading, factually incorrect information. And if I can be blunt and possibly undiplomatic, it is much worse for people to be receiving incorrect training than no training at all. So it is of utmost importance to us that disabled people ourselves are front and centre of developing and delivering that training. It is of no use to our community when harmful stereotypes and misinformation is perpetuated, and then the people that we are speaking to are coming from a place of having incorrect information about us, and everything we say being framed through that. So that may be a surprise to committee members, but it is quite common and it urgently needs to be addressed.
Elaine, you've
just to link back to a council member who said it, I can't remember the name, but we're talking about improvements like in playgrounds and county councils areas. We see that, and I'm always happy to see when we make accessibility better. But sometimes those things happen without consultation with the people with the disability. For example, a playground was they put in some diagrams of finger spelling of sign language, but they actually used the American alphabet rather than the Irish alphabet in ISL. And that was done without consultation. And SBHE books that are used in curriculums in school, I think is fantastic to introduce sign language in there, but the information, again, and sign language depicted in the book was American Sign Language. So that's a clear example of how we are not consulted with. And the second thing I'd like to talk about, it's a bit about who is responsible for what. In the Irish Deaf Society, as I mentioned already, we don't have all the necessary resources, but we are willing to help in communities where deaf people live to see how they're getting on, or where deaf people live in nursing homes, or where deaf people live independently in communities. But who is responsible? Is it the HSE? Is it nursing homes? Who is responsible for the sign language access? Nobody seems to know the role of advocacy is so important, and we need to work with who is within staff in communities who have access to budgets to help and assist other people and sometimes staff who are lower down in the grading structure have less knowledge, and they don't know who to ask higher up for access for the deaf person who they're in contact with. If we could we can't change anything until we're at the table in consultation with the decision makers. And it's really important. If the HSE want deaf people to assist other people living in isolation in communities to continue living independently, or if they could be deaf, a deaf person with autism, a deaf person who's also a wheelchair user. It's not just you provide an interpreter and that's it for the consultation. It's more. That person lives all day long in their communities or all day long in a nursing home. It's not just about providing an interpreter for a meeting, which is great, but what about the rest of the day? It's likewise in schools. You can provide an SNA for a child while they're in school, but what happens to the rest of their day? So we need to be included in the community. Thank you.
Yes, just a quick follow-up question, answer that. You know, I think the message about meaningful participation is coming across very clearly in this meeting, and the need for it and to build on what's there already. And, you know, I just wanted to voice our concern that we've no doubt that state organisations and local authorities are growing in awareness of CRPD and the need to involve DPOs. But, you know, when we are asked for input and we don't have the resources and capacity to deliver in the timely fashion that may be required by organisations, we need the attitude from the state that this would be a call to action to resource us, not that it becomes a tick box that it's been attempted and failed because the DPO organisations didn't have the resources. And you know, this is something that we're really concerned about. We realise it's going to take a number of years with the best will in the world to build capacity and resources for DPOs, and we're glad to be at the early stages of that journey. And we need the state to recognise that as well. And when we talk about agencies working together, what we find is that quite often we're asked to participate in discussion forums that overlap in terms of content. You know, we might be sitting on 3 different committees talking about the same thing. And so we need agencies working together. We also need some kind of joined up thinking about how to maximise on the resources that DPOs have as they grow. Thank you.